Coming up on today's show.
What are your goals? What works in this space and what doesn't work in this space? What are your needs? Do we need the sporting equipment? Can this be kept in the garage? Well, if it's a ski boot, no, because you want it warm.
Louise, you are known in the industry as the one who handles the complicated customers, our clients, right?
Go.
You love your complicated customers.
I do. You know, it reminds me of a client who wanted desperately to release things, to let go, to eliminate and declutter, but just didn't know how to do it.
Organizing FAQ, today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we've got a panel of some of the most precious people.
Yes.
That's because they all live in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and they're live in our studio today. But we have members of the Minnesota NAPO chapter. Now, I'm going to introduce Christine Daves and Louise Kurzika and Janet Fowles. And I'm John Hunt, of course. You all know me. But, we have this panel together because I thought it would be fun to talk about the most frequently asked questions. And, first of all, let's talk a little bit about NAPO, because there's a national organization, Louise, NAPO.net, which is the National Association of Professional Organizers.
Right.
But then we have a Minnesota chapter, and you just happen to be the president of that, right?
I just happen to be the current president of NAPO, Minnesota.
You've been in like a White House then, or it's not that kind of president, huh?
Sadly not.
Okay.
There are some perks that come with it.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the NAPO Minnesota
so we're
chapter.
a chapter that have been around for, I think we're going on our 22nd year.
Okay.
We're one of the 5th or 6th of NAPO chapters across the country. So we were very innovative back then and continue to be. So we have members. In actuality, we represent Minnesota, Western Wisconsin, Iowa, North and South Dakota.
Wow.
So we do have some outstate and other state members as well.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, something fun that we've just been experimenting with is our programming for our members. We're now videotaping.
Oh.
So those who can't be on site are able to access later
that's great.
whatever our programs are, speakers or events and that sort of thing. But we, what's great is we have, right now, I think we're 35, 37 members. And of course, those are regular organizers. And then we have our really beloved associate members, of which Smead is, I think, the longest term associate member for the NAPO Minnesota, which we, of course, always appreciate the support that you provide us. But we work together to learn how to be better organizers, how to improve our business and how we operate as businesses, and also to take care of ourselves because we're all independent business owners, and we need to remember that.
Well, a little bit later in the program, we're going to talk too about how different really a professional organizer can be from each of you guys have your own areas of expertise, and we'll get into a little bit about that as we talk about the most frequently asked questions. And Janet, I'm going to start with you because I know in our previous podcast we talked about you had this experience as a librarian, kind of this natural built-in organization. But when you're meeting a client for the first time, what are some of those questions that to you, it seems really natural, but it's common to them?
Right. So one of the first questions I get is, what am I going to do with all this stuff?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so they're thinking about where, if they don't keep it, where is it going to go, and what is the best use of it, and what opportunities are there to sell it and make a lot of money, or which is sadly not often the case, or to donate it, and where will it do the most good?
Right. Well, do you have a game plan for your first hour with a client? I mean, are you trying to assess what their situation is?
My first thought is trying to figure out what their goal is.
Okay.
And get them, what is their vision, what is their goal, where do they want to go? Begin with the end in mind is how I think of it.
Right.
And so that's what I'm first trying to ascertain.
Awesome. Well, Christine, you may have a different approach. We understand that everyone's a little different here, but what are some of the most popular questions that you get?
A lot of my clients come to me with struggles about paper. They have too much mail coming in or mail that's not been sorted. They have kids' backpacks lying around. They have extra shoes, extra sporting equipment, all of this stuff that's piled up and is just kind of driving them nuts. And it's kind of this weight on their shoulders. And how do I deal with it? It can seem overwhelming when there's not a plan in place.
Right.
I start similar to Jeanette saying, what are your goals? What works in this space and what doesn't work in this space?
Right.
What are your needs? Do we need the sporting equipment? Can this be kept in the garage? Well, if it's a ski boot, no, because you want it warm. You know, those types of things. How do you want people to be able to move through here? What are your kids really going to do with their backpacks? Can we really expect them to go across the house and put them in their marked spot, or are they going to be dropped here? And if it's going to be dropped at the front door, let's hang up a hook, or what are our options? And I usually like to start with what do they want to accomplish, and then brainstorm and get a feel of what their aesthetic is and what their, everybody has a different level of organization to be happy. And it's not, I don't come in and say, this is where you have to be. I come in and try to gauge where do they want to be, and then how do we make that happen?
Now, I'm assuming that several people have like lots of priorities, right? Priority is supposed to be one thing, right?
Right.
But how do you focus on the first thing? How do you come to that? Like, you can't do everything at once, right? So
Sure.
How do you get them to, well, how do we start? What's the first thing?
It varies. And I think one of the great things about being an organizer is that all of my sessions are specific to that client, and everything kind of ebbs and flows on what the client says and what, even how they're feeling and how they respond to things. And you can kind of see some are more anxious, others are, I don't know, some are really relaxed and just want to get this stuff dealt with. Usually, once we know what their priorities are, I will start with a game plan with what are we going to do? How are we going to approach this? And frequently, let's say it's a pile of clutter. What I want to do is come through and separate it. I want to say, here's all of your art supplies. Here's all of your kitchen things. Maybe it's a pile in the basement. And here's things that have it's kind of become a dumping ground. So what I want to do is go in, figure out what's what, and then the client can take a look and say, I don't need 3 crock pots. I don't need 14 fondue sets or what have you. And then from there, we can say, okay, these are the things you don't need. Some of these might be very nice things that you want to give to an aunt or to a nephew or what have you. Other things might be great for goodwill, or we can look at what are other charities that are important to things that you care about.
Right.
And let's try to find a place that's meaningful to put those things.
Right. Now, Louise, you are known in the industry as the one who handles the complicated customers, our clients, right?
Go.
You love your complicated customers.
I do.
Give us an example of maybe a more challenging client that you've worked with, and kind of what their question would be.
That, it reminds me of a client who wanted desperately to release things, to let go, to eliminate and declutter, but just didn't know how to do it. And she was someone who did have obsessive compulsive disorder mixed in with hoarding disorder. So she had a lot of rules about how things needed to be, or her expectation. And we worked together for a fair amount of time. And really that's the sad part, is sometimes there are people who need more outside support away from an organizer. Therapeutic support, family support, social service community support, that the organizer can't do it alone. Right. So even though I love to work with people with those kinds of challenges, the sad part is sometimes we come to a place where no matter what strategies we try, no matter what approaches, no matter what short-term measures we work with them on, we just can't get them to what they would like it to be. Right. And I think sometimes that can be very hard for us to take, because we're doers. Right. We are problem solvers. Right. We want to get to that end point. Now, I could balance that, though, with an example just recently. And as a matter of fact, this was a team approach, and Christine worked with the project with me. And this was a woman who had a medical issue. She had been in the hospital for quite some time and now was in nursing care, doing some rehabilitation. And before you go home, social workers want to know what your home environment is. Will it support you? And if you have an overly cluttered home environment, they are not going to let you go home. And so she called and brought me in, and we talked about the project, and I went to her home and looked at things, and I got a plan together of what could happen. And in a very short period of time, within 10 days, we had taken a very cluttered, dangerous for her, because balance was one of her issues, environment, and made it a safe, clean place with everything operating as it should be. For fixtures, plumbing and electrical and everything else, so that she could go from the nursing care facility to her home and not have to go to a hotel or to friends or someplace else.
Now, just a real quick high level, what were a couple of those things on that checklist that had to be done before she could move home, and like how'd you solve those?
Well, some of it was she had gotten so overwhelmed with recycling, because she believed it's really important to recycle everything. She'd gotten so overwhelmed that there was recycling everywhere. Like as I walked into the kitchen, I think, there were probably 4 or 5 bags, large bags of recycling materials that left that kitchen immediately. So that was a really easy one. She had a leak in the basement. And so we needed to get a plumber in to assess the situation. And she said, well, while the plumber's there, I might as well fix this in the bathroom and this in the bathroom too, if you're going to have them come. And so I gave a recommendation of a plumber, brought that person in. He gave an estimate and assessment, and then I managed him coming back in and getting that done and coordinating that between the rest of the things that had to get cleared and contained and categorized and stored so that the space would be clear. When it comes to code, typically the code says 36 inches of space is what you have to have for a walkway through all rooms. And in each room you need to have at least 2 exits. So that means that if there's only one door, that means a window has to be cleared. That you can't have piles of stuff in front of it. You have to be able to get out, or someone has to be able to get in through there.
Well, that is a complicated kind of situation.
That was a big project.
It sounds like you wore many hats in that, kind of like the general contractor.
Well, and professional organizers are very suited to this. I think of Jeanette's background and Christine's background before she came to this, working with a School of Art and Design and coordinating things there. We're kind of project manager people. And so there's not a lot of other people who can do that and do the organizing.
Yeah. Now, Jeanette, is there ever been a time when you've had to tell somebody no, or like, I don't think that's right for me? I mean, describe that situation.
We all have different areas, as you said, of expertise, and so when somebody approaches me and they enumerate a number of brain-based conditions, so anxiety, depression, maybe obsessive compulsive disorder, I'm not trained to do that, and it would be harmful. I would do harm rather than good in a situation like that. So I can refer clients of that nature to people who are trained, organizers who do have the background to actually help those people. Right.
And there is a code of ethics with the NAPO organization, correct? I mean, so you're not going to take on something that you can't handle. Christine, I know you had some counseling or higher education background, so you don't necessarily want to take on something that you're not qualified to do, right?
Definitely, and that can sometimes be a thin line in organizing, because you work with people, you go through their things, you get to know them, and I think that we sometimes will walk a thin line between what is the right thing to do as a professional organizer versus a therapist. We are not therapists. As a career counselor in my previous life, it was similar in that everything I do has to be based on what are the goals of the client and how do we get them there. If the client has issues that maybe I have some ideas about, it still is not my place to say like, well, let me psychoanalyze you. But it is definitely my place to say, these are really big thoughts you're having. These sound like really challenging issues. Have you spoken to anybody? Do you know about this resource that lists different therapists? I have also, at times when I've run into things, I've contacted Louise or other organizers and said, I've run into this situation. I'm not sure what the right thing to do is. What do you recommend? And that has been immensely helpful, because as was mentioned, people have different specialties, and being able to tap into those specialties is great. And that's what's great about the NAPO group too, is that we're a great group of colleagues that are really supportive of each other.
You know, John, that really brings up a good point that I think the viewers would be helpful to them to know is the organizers who are a part of NAPO and of chapters are not like other organizers open for business.
Right.
So whether it's the code of ethics, whether it's the training now, which is mandatory, there's an ethics class and 2 other organizing classes that you have to take before you can join the group, or it's our continuing education through the programs that we do. You know, we are passionate about being on the cutting edge of strategies and tools and understanding things, going to our national conference, which of course Smead often attends as well as a vendor. We are a little bit different than the folks out there who say, oh yeah, I can organize you. So I really encourage people to look at that and carry the weight of that when they're making a choice and a decision, because that really makes a difference in the outcome you have long term.
Right. Well, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the differences from our panel here. We've got 3 different organizers, all here from the Minnesota NAPO chapter, so we'll be right back.
Would your family be able to easily access your important documents for a major life event? Having your key life documents organized helps ensure that your wishes and assets are managed, retained, and distributed as needed while being less stressful for you and your loved ones. The Life Document Organizer Kit helps you to organize and store key life documents like wills and trusts, healthcare directives, investment and retirement plans, marital documents, key personal contacts, and more. Life events that might trigger a need for these documents include a health condition where someone may need to take over certain responsibilities, or decisions regarding care or communicating your wishes regarding your assets. And access to these important documents is key. The Smead Life Document Organizer Kit is divided into 6 color-coded sections. Each section contains individual folders that pertain to that section. The Smead Wheel of Organization provides an easy reference and guide to recommend what documents should be stored within each section. The Life Document Organizer Kit has the flexibility to expand by adding additional categories that are specific to your own situation. Being prepared can alleviate your own stress and the stress of others. Keep your life and the documents that matter most in order with the Life Documents Organizer Kit. From Smead, keeping you organized.
We are back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about organizing FAQ. It's a kind of a free-for-all here with our panel from the Minnesota NAPO members. We have Christine Daves, Louise Kurzika, and Jeanette Fowles. And so Louise, when we started before the break, we talked a lot of different approaches, and you get asked questions about things that maybe you're not qualified. Talk about what you are, what's your wheelhouse? What are you really good at when it comes to you? And what would you say no to?
You know, it's interesting because I've been in the field as long as I have now, going on 24 years. I am more of a generalist in who I work with. Mm-hmm. So that person might be a homeowner, might be residential, might be a woman or a man, might be a business person, a professional. But usually, because of my depth of experience and knowledge and the training that through all these years I have continued to build and grow on, I do tend to work with people who have more like a special challenge, kind of what we would call the chronically disorganized, if you will, people with lifelong challenges, or maybe because of a new issue that's been diagnosed or has occurred, are now having great struggles with that. And these are folks that the traditional challenge or the traditional solutions just don't always work for. So this might be neurobiological because they've been diagnosed or not diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, some form of that. It can be because they have anxiety or compulsive kinds of disorder. It can be because of depression. You know, depression is something that affects people in so many layers and so many ways. I can always tell when I'm working with a client who has been diagnosed with depression, I can almost tell you exactly when it started. And that's when the backup of mail and papers and magazines are dated from.
Oh, really?
Sure, because it starts to let you know. It starts to let you know that this was the point in time that they quit daily rituals and weekly habits of opening the mail, sorting through things or reading their magazines and then recycling them because they become overwhelmed with life.
Yeah. Now, do you try to address that with them and say, hey, what happened about this time in life, or do you not get into that?
No, that's not my role.
Okay.
As Christine mentioned in the previous segment, we are not therapists. Certainly what we do is therapeutic, and I've taken training from therapists to learn how to talk to someone in that situation. And like Christine said, I will encourage them to look for resources if they aren't there. A lot of times people are referred to me by therapists. So that's wonderful because that means they've already gotten to a place where they're getting medication overview, and maybe that's been introduced to help them. They've gotten a good therapeutic dialogue going. Maybe they've gotten support through work or through their family. And are changing some of their lifestyle things because now they're getting out and doing an activity. So, that's the joy of working with folks in that position because now it's like they're ready to address those things. I will often hear the stories though, and I think we all will. We'll hear what happened. We'll hear. I have every person that I've worked with who has hoarding disorder has within the first hour told me what the loss is.
Oh, really?
Underline there's some very large loss, and I there's not one that has not told me within the first hour what it was, what was the trigger, whether they realize they're telling me it or not. They all self-reported. So being able to assist somebody in that is great. So it's working with all kinds of populations, but generally folks in these areas that need that extra understanding, that extra training, and that extra experience.
Right. Well, Janet, how does your business model or clientele differ a little bit from Louise's and the kinds of people you're working with?
It does differ actually dramatically from Louise's population. I have had great success working with professionals who have encountered a transition, a big transition in their life. So they may have retired, they may have be downsizing, they may have a chronic illness that is overwhelming them. And their previous systems for organizing no longer work, and they just don't know where to start. How am I going to reinvent this? Often my clients are widows, and they have tried to honor the previous systems that the family had in place, and it doesn't work for them, and they don't really understand how to build a system that works for them.
Right. What do you think from someone who's in a transition? What is their probably number one concern?
Let's see.
I mean, would it be like, for example, somebody moving? Are they concerned what it's going to be like, or where am I going to put everything? I mean, more tangible like that, or
their concern is where do I start?
Okay.
It's finding that starting place that in a project. And as Louise described, we're good project managers. We figure out, well, you need to do A before B. So if you're going to be moving, you're going to need to decide what you're going to bring with you, and then what to do with what isn't, and here's a way to approach that, and here's a timeline you can follow.
Okay.
So I often ask people what their timeline is for a given activity.
Yeah, and that helps with their expectations too, right?
Right.
Great. Christine, your business, how does it differ? What kinds of people are you encountering?
Well, I work with a lot of families and couples and individuals, but it's usually people that have some sort of stress or anxiety caused by clutter or disorganization. And so this might be they need a system in their house to manage something. It might be people who, as I had mentioned earlier, I've just, my kids have been growing up and I've put all the clothes that they've outgrown down in the basement, and there's a huge pile. I want it to go away. I also work with people that are chronically disorganized, although that's not as big of a part of my business. And then I also work with people or situations where somebody has lost a loved one and there's a home that needs to be cleared out. And there it's a very different experience, but it's a lot of one-on-one work with the client who's usually not in the home, and a lot of communicating via email, via virtual, taking lots of photographs, sorting things, making sure nothing leaves the home without the client's knowledge, and really helping them through their grief as they as we get the home prepared for the next transition.
Right. Okay, I'm going to ask each of this question. Louise, I'll start with you. What's one thing you'd like someone to know about you or about organizing before they call you?
I'd like people to know that even though it seems like a large financial investment and a large time investment, the value that we can bring to their lives will really outweigh the costs if they take the stretch, if they just try.
Okay. Janet?
I would like people to know that they can succeed.
Okay.
That this is not an impossible task, although it looks overwhelming. That we can break it down into munchable chunks, and it will work for them.
Good. Christine?
I would like people to call me when they know that they are ready to move things, to change things. If somebody is stressed out by clutter but is not ready to get rid of anything, then I can't do anything. And so I guess I would like people to know about me that I'm active, and when I show up, I'm ready to take something that's kind of chaotic and make it peaceful. But that involves changing things, and that involves possibly getting rid of things, and that you should be ready to do that and excited to do it, recognizing that it's not always easy, but ready to do that when you bring an organizer in.
Wow. These have been some great tips. I want to give each of you one more question, which is how do people get a hold of you, and just the kind of clients you work with. Janet, we'll start with you.
Right. So my website is lessismoreworks.com.
Okay.
People can go and contact me from the website. And I'm sorry, the other
the kinds of customers that would, who would call you.
Right. I think mostly it is people who are facing a big transition in the latter stages of their life, usually professionals who've had systems that work for them in the past and are looking to establish new ones.
Okay, good. Christine?
My company name is Think Organized. My website is www.think.
Get the extra W in there, right?
Yes. www.think-organized.com, and people can always contact me via my website. I also have a Facebook page and all of that fun stuff. The people that I work with the most are families and individuals, usually residential. I do some office work, but usually it's people with families and are trying to keep on top of everything.
Great. And they got to be ready to work when they get together with you, right?
It's going to go a lot better if they are.
We're going to remember that. Louise, how do people get a hold of you?
So Everything's Together is my business, everythingstogether.com website. And 952-939-8080 is the phone number.
Okay.
Work in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, but I also work virtually with clients. So you can be anywhere you want to. And I have to say, because I'm so glad you said about your Facebook page, my nephew, who's been helping me with my Facebook page, because of course he's a millennial, please go like my Facebook page. Yes. Please go like it, because I do post things every week about interesting articles or things that are going on. And that's a fun way to have a dialogue. I love when people leave comments. I ask questions. Yeah. It's a fun way to interact with people.
Yeah, social media is one of those things where there's a lot of questions and answers. And obviously we didn't get through all the questions that everyone would ever have, but if they want to contact each of you, we're going to have that information in the show notes and, or on your Facebook page. I'm sure if someone asks you a question, Louise, right? You'll answer that.
Please ask me. Everything's Together
Thumbs
on
up,
Facebook.
Right? Yeah, great. Well, there you have it, folks. Frequently asked questions. I know we didn't cover them all, but we got a lot of great gems, and we'll see you next time on Keeping You Organized.